Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, it looks like the Justice Department wants to ban more Americans from owning firearms. That's right. Barack Hussein Obama is proposing new firearm regulations that will flat out revoke gun rights for those the federal government declares to be mentally unfit. And that's a scary thought, considering the fact that the official diagnostic system for mental disorders in the U.S., the DSM-5, it is so broad that almost every form of human behavior can be diagnosed as some type of mental illness. And don't forget, it was back in 2012, so not very long ago, that the Department of Veteran Affairs, they actually sent out letters to U.S. military veterans informing them that their competence levels were under review. And if the federal government rated them incompetent, they would be prohibited from purchasing, possessing, receiving, or transporting a firearm or even ammunition. And they weren't screwing around either, because lots of veterans lost their God-given right to self-defense as the Second Amendment was completely trampled on by the Obama administration.
So everybody who's a veteran, here's the article, federal government moves to disarm veterans. They're all getting a letter saying that we will order you to relinquish your guns or we'll send police to take your guns, no judge or jury. And physical reasons. They're now taking veterans' kids if your leg's blown off. Okay, and there's the letter. Notice if you're watching us on Infowars News at prisonplanet.tv. Going to Mr. Schmecker, here's the headline. Veterans' guns confiscated after forced psychiatric evaluation. Purge against arms ex-servicemen accelerates. And so just briefly, tell us the story of what happened to you, what precipitated it, and where your guns are now, and how they're charging you for the days you were held at the hospital. David Schmecker, thank you for joining us.
Yes, no problem. Yes, I requested to see a pain management specialist, and they came back to me, the Veterans Administration came back to me and said that you have to see a half hour of a psychiatrist and a half hour of a psychologist for a spine injury. And I refuse to do that because I have a spine injury. I don't really, I don't want to see, especially not a veterans hospital psychiatrist. Yeah, so I refused, and 6 months later, basically the hospital, my primary care physician called to have a wellness check placed on me, and the local police perform a wellness check. Well, the local police came up, and there was nothing wrong with me. I had no, there was no anxiety. I wasn't combative. I basically, but I wasn't with anybody, so I had no witnesses, and they didn't have a warrant, and they, through intimidation, forcefully commandeered my vehicle and entered my home, searched and seized my weapons, and then, carted me away in an ambulance to psychiatric evaluation, which I was held for 72 hours.
So there's a good example of what started back in 2012, targeting veterans. Now they want to test all of our competence levels to see whether or not we are responsible enough to protect ourselves and protect our very own families. And other proposed regulations include, get this, they want rules on where our firearms are stored and how they are stored in our very own homes. Man, I tell you what. And there will even be new restrictions on what they determine to be high-power pistols. Whatever the hell that is, it should be interesting. That's their words, not mine. High-power pistols. So that should be an interesting list indeed. And of course, we learned to expect all this from the Obama regime, even though he originally campaigned against it.
When y'all go home and you're talking to your buddies and they say, he wants to take my gun away. You've heard it here. I'm on television, so everybody knows it. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in people's lawful right to bear arms. I will not take your shotgun away. I will not take your rifle away. I won't take your handgun away.
Wait a minute. Was that evidence of a corrupt politician breaking a campaign promise? I mean, that never happens.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Yeah. And if you think a Republican president is going to jump in and repeal all this in 2016, think again, because it ain't happening. You know, I'll be the first to tell you that I know none of this is happening overnight, but it is indeed happening. The globalists want America unarmed. They want us castrated. So gun confiscation is happening. They're off to a good start, and they're doing a little song and dance. This is what I call the 2 steps forward, 1 step back routine. And here's how it works. The Obama administration introduces ridiculous and outrageous gun restrictions that inspire outrage all across the country. 2 steps forward. Then Obama backs away from the plan while trying to preserve as much of the plan as possible. This is a tactical withdrawal. 1 step back, and of course that equals 1 step closer to total gun confiscation. You see, there's always portions of the gun restrictions that survive the public's backlash. And if you think about it, I mean, it's very clever. This is how they make progress, and this is how they take away our guns. For example, they may not succeed in banning AR-15 ammo, all right? But what they do is other measures will be pushed through. And then the Democrats come back with a compromise. And they tell everyone, hey, let's be reasonable. Let's meet halfway on this issue. That's how it's done. Meanwhile, they launch a massive propaganda campaign through movies and television trying to convince you that gun owners are bad, not to mention very dangerous.
Part of every day, some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
That's right. And it was Attorney General Eric Holder who said they were talking about plans of making us gun owners wear electronic bracelets. Remember that?
Vice President Biden and I had a meeting with a group of technology people and talked about how guns can be made more safe by making them either through fingerprint identification, the gun talks to a bracelet or something that you might wear, how guns can be used only by the person who is lawfully in possession of the weapon.
Wow. And they want us to have psychological evaluations. I tell you what, that guy's crazy right there. There's no way I'm ever wearing an electronic bracelet. And as long as we're playing Eric Holder clips, might as well throw in a Dianne Feinstein while you're at it.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it.
From my cold dead hands, Feinstein. And remember, this is all going on while at the same time the federal government and the Department of Homeland Security, they are stockpiling massive amounts of weapons and ammunition. While at the same time, they are declaring publicly that the #1 domestic threat to our country is returning veterans. And one way to restrict veterans from owning firearms, well, that is to get them addicted to pharmaceutical drugs. In the latest video released from Project Veritas, they discovered that that's exactly what's going on right now with our nation's veterans. Many of them are becoming drug addicts thanks to the good old VA.
It's not, what people think of as sick patients so much. It's people that have drug. That's sick. Some of which are caused by us and our prescribing.
They create drug addicts.
In my opinion, they create a drug addict.
The VA does push pills.
It's sick care, not health care.
Is the overprescription thing like common with the VA?
It's common in the whole country.
And with me now is returning veteran Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs. What's your reaction to the video? And I want to get your reaction also to the VA pushing these dangerous drugs on veterans.
Well, like you said earlier, if the VA is not trying to disarm you so you can't protect yourself and you get killed that way, they're going to try to prescribe you these pills. So in essence, you just go out and you kill yourself. And that's what's happening. You know, in the past 2.5 months, I've lost 2 of my Army buddies to suicide due to overprescription. And now we have this new James O'Keefe video out from Project Veritas saying that the VA members are basically turning veterans into drug addicts. And he had the opportunity to speak to doctors and nurses, contract workers, senior volunteers. That's all said that they were pushing pills, and it's part of the agenda going on there at the VA. I mean, this is something that we've been talking about for quite some time as one of the problems, that they push pills, but they do not get to the root of the problem. And that's one of the things many of the people in the video said, that, hey, we're not allowed to get to the root of the problem. We're just gonna keep prescribing you one pill after another, and eventually it'll work, or you end up killing yourself.
Yeah, and it's a very revealing video, hidden camera. I love the work Project Veritas does. And we also know that there is an epidemic of military suicides right now. Some estimate as many as 22 suicides per day. And we also know that most of the pharmaceutical drugs that are being prescribed by the VA, you know, it could lead to suicide, like we're saying. So it's a very dangerous combo.
Yeah, it's Oxycontin, morphine, Dilaudid, Percocet. When I was in Afghanistan, they used to give me 50 sheets of Percocet a week. Usually when you're deployed, or if you get hurt sometime, you know, here back in civilian life, you might get 90 Percocet to last you 90 days. They were giving us 50 a week. And then when we came back, about a month before we'd come back, and we moved to another base, and we're getting ready to, like, you know, kind of like desensitize and go through briefings, like, hey, you're going back to the real world. They go, hey, you know, by the way, I know you guys are kind of addicted to these pills, but you have to stop now, cold turkey. And once you get back, if you take a urine test and you still have that in your system, we will kick you out. And that's a lot of things that are happening. That's how they get veterans when they get out. They get them addicted to these drugs, and then they turn their back on them. They don't get to the root of the problem, and they end up in mental institutes. They end up killing themselves, or they just go plain crazy and go on some kind of, you know, it's just out of this world, the fact that we can't get any kind of health care for these guys.
Well, and my thing is, too, is we're learning that it could also lead to gun confiscation, because a sure way to get your guns taken away, or a sure way to fail the DSM-5 psychological evaluation, is to be on these prescription drugs for anxiety, for depression, or for PTSD.
I mean, I'll be real with you right now. There's been many times where right when I was getting out, I was going through the VA process to enter, and I spoke with psychologists and all that, because I have diagnosed PTSD and have all these different things, and they pushed all these pills, and there were many times where I was sitting there with a gun in my mouth, with no other way of knowing what to do, and you would have these mental breakdowns. I would be driving down the road, and at a stoplight, start screaming and tears coming out, not knowing why I was so angry, and I'd be punching the roof of my car. That's the effect those drugs have. The time that I finally realized that that was the cause of my problems, and that it could be treated another way, I went home, I flushed all that stuff down the toilet. That's been almost 2 years, and I have not had a breakdown like that. I haven't had any kind of depressing thoughts, no suicidal things like that whatsoever. Those drugs will kill you.
Yeah, they do lead to suicide, and we've seen that not just in veterans, but in the general public as well. And I'm just thinking what a tragedy it is that someone that is suffering from depression needs counseling, needs someone to talk to, but they might be afraid to approach anyone, because if they do so, they might have their guns taken away, or they might be prescribed these dangerous drugs.
Which will get them taken away then too.
Absolutely.
So it's a lose-lose situation for our returning vets here in America.
All right, Joe Biggs, thanks for staying on top of all this. It's good to have you on our side. Hey, look, we're going to take a quick break right now. The Infowars Nightly News will return right after this message to all you Bush supporters out there. We'll be right back. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Vote for Jeb, or you're just fucking stupid.
Fool me, we can't get fooled again. Another major health threat, this one in Toledo, Ohio, where everybody in the entire city has been told not to drink the water.
Ohio's governor declaring a state of emergency.
Did you know that the average person uses about 80 to 100 gallons of water at home every single day? If there's a water emergency, will you be prepared?
Panicked residents forming long lines throughout the day.
We're here at a supermarket in Toledo. You can see the shelves empty where water once was.
To stay safe and healthy during a crisis, you must have access to safe, clean water. Water which will not be available at your local grocery store.
There's a mad dash on right now to stock up on supplies.
The ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system is a must-have for every modern, independently minded household. Protect your family's safety during an emergency. Go to InfoWarsStore.com today to purchase your ProPure Pro 1 G2.0 water filtration system or call 1-888-253-3139.